Welcome to Studio 58A live here at our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook here at the Jamaica Information Service. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone who's joining us online, especially those of you from all over the country and all over the world. We do appreciate it. We do really appreciate your feedback. Remember, this is your program. We ask you to share this video with as many people as you can so we can have a vibrant, lively discussions with persons chiming in and sending their comments as often as possible. Now, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information is collaborating with the Jamaica Constabulary Force to stage the Anti-Gang Week, which is aimed at steering youth away from criminal activities. It's part of a special partnership involving the Ministry and the Constabulary Force's Counter-Terrorism and Organised Crime Investigation Branch, CTOC. It's designed to engage at-risk youth using more proactive approaches. Today, to share some details about this initiative are Head of CTOC, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Fitz Bailey, man in the middle right here. Director of Safety and Security in Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Police, Coleridge Minto, man to my immediate right. And Detective Inspector Clifton Green, Sub-Officer in charge of the National Anti-Gang Unit. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let me go straight into it. What was the rationale behind designing this week and you know, getting it launched at this time?
All right. In March or April of this year, there was a posting on one of the social media platforms regarding a possible mass shooting within one of our high schools. Okay. We conducted an investigation and we identified a particular student. We recognized that there was a misinterpretation of the posting that was placed. However, we thought that there was a need for some intervention in respect of that particular student. The Ministry of Education was contacted, and I was Mr. Minto, Coleridge Minto. We had some discussions, and I know they provided some intervention in terms of, I think it's psychological and other type of intervention. There was another incident that occurred at another high school in which a particular teacher was targeted by one of the students. Right. And a device was built, an explosive device, and two students were sustained injury as a result of that.
Went that far ahead?
Yeah, that's far. Okay. And we, again, continue a dialogue, and the Ministry of Education actually convened a one-day workshop at one of our hotels in St. James, and we came up with a plan of action in terms of how can we partner together to target at-risk youth who are predisposed to joining gangs. And that's where this initiative started. Since we met and the plan of action, a number of activities actually took place prior to this week of activity, and I would defer to Mr. Minto to speak of some of those activities. That's
going to be my next question in terms of what are some of the planned activities and so on that have taken place.
I think Commissioner Bailey set the tone very well in outlining how the partnership started, and we're actually strengthening it. When we met in March, April of this year, following that special one-day intense meeting, we rolled out a number of initiatives. The first point of order, we developed a strategic plan going forward, which was geared towards prevention rather than dealing with it after the fact. And so CTOC, in support of the ministry, we arranged special intervention, firstly, with our school administrators, our principals. So we arranged 6 educational regional conferences where we invited all the principals of the schools per region. And so for that intervention, we had almost 1,000 principals benefiting from a special presentation done. I must also add that the presentations were both from CTOC, and we had Dr. Herbert Gale, who also presented at all of those sessions. Following those 6 regional conferences, in July, we have annual back-to-school conferences. One was held at the conference center downtown Kingston and the other in Montego Bay. Over 2,000 persons benefited just by those two conferences. So in all, Commissioner, we would have interfaced with about 3,000 plus teachers, administrators, deans of discipline, bursars, in terms of the anti-gang presentation. So the week of activities is a continuation of what we started in the last school year. Now we're going to the students. Okay. And that is why there's a specific day in honor of the JCF 150 year of celebration that we are now going to be going into 150 schools right across the 14 parishes, and that is both at the primary level, secondary level, and we have included some independent or private schools to also benefit from this intervention.
Okay, and in terms of, can you give me is that one of the specific activities, and give me some of the other list of activities that you have planned for the week going into? It begins on Sunday, correct?
Right. I'll ask Commissioner to speak on this.
Okay, we start our activity with a church service at Church on the Rock. That's Sunday at 9:30. A number of dignitaries will have been invited, including the two ministers, Minister of National Security, Minister of Education. We have Diplomatic Corps, etc. And then on Monday, we have what we call media and PR promotions. And the objective really is to sensitize the population, to say, this is what we are doing. We want you to be enlisted to support what we are doing.
Okay.
And to talk of some of the things, the intervention strategies. And then on Tuesday, we'll have the presentations in schools. 150 schools have been targeted. And I must say at this point that we are getting a lot of requests since we have actually announced. I mean, up to late last night, I've been getting requests from schools that they want to participate, they want us to come in, they want us not only just to come for a presentation, they want us to come in the school for the day to engage and support some of the activities that they are doing. On Wednesday, we have what we call state intervention with the Department of Correctional Services.
Okay, so you're going into the facilities, the correctional
services? No, there are 50 persons have been targeted from these facilities, and we will meet at the Caymanas Golf Club. Okay. It is something that is being spearheaded by the USAID.
USAID is funding
that activity for that day. And so we'll be going, those persons will be invited, and we'll have an entire day of activity, presentation, different types of intervention for those wards.
Right.
And then on Thursday, we have a public meeting or a town hall meeting at Mandela Park, where we'll seek to engage the public. There are a number of persons who will be there, myself, ACP Steve McGregor acting ACP. We have persons from the correctional institution, from the Ministry of Education, from CSJP, just to name a few. Okay. And then we conclude the week of activity with what we call edutainment day, Friday, at the transport center, where we have a number of entertainers who will be participating.
Spreading the message. To spread the message.
Tony Rebel and some other artists have consented to be a part of it. So it's going to be a very exciting.
Yeah, sounds like a very packed week covering a lot of bases. They have the wards, you have the students, you have the teachers. Yeah, it sounds like a wide thing.
All children.
But we want to point out that this is not just a one-week activity, because we'll continue our intervention after the week of activity.
All right. I'm sure that many persons will be pleased about that aspect, but I want to bring Detective Inspector Green in on a conversation now and ask him, from where you sit as a sub-officer in charge of National Anti-Gang Unit, what are some of the things you are seeing that makes an initiative like this necessary? I mean, what are some of the factors that you're seeing that account for the gang activity, or the increase, or I don't want to say increase, but the prevalence of it, so to speak?
Well, the young minds are very much fertile, and of such, we have to ensure that even whilst we're doing suppression activities, we pay attention to the other 4 pillars that does support the anti-gang strategy as put forward by the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Now, we speak about prevention and diversion, supportive environment for successful anti-gang efforts, strategic communication. We're doing some of that now.
Definitely.
Yes, effective coordination. And I'm seeing we're outside of the suppression aspects. This particular effort has direct impact on all the other 4 set of activities, that do support the overarching strategy in getting to these young minds. These youngsters, they represent the future of Jamaica. And it means, therefore, whilst we are suppressing, yes, suppression is good, but we ought to ensure that we curb the tree from it is young.
Right.
And we have a saying in this campaign earlier, a stitch in time saves 9.
Definitely.
And it means, therefore,
Could very well save 9 lives.
There we go. And the youngsters, the young minds really, they are bright young minds out there. And it is within our responsibility as law enforcement and also other agents of the state and other NGOs. It's in our best interest to see that these young minds, are properly diverted, properly trained in the way that would reflect good support for future Jamaica.
All right. So this naturally, this is not something that the police or the ministry necessarily can do by themselves. You will need the support of the people in the country at large. And I think for me, and I suppose for many other persons, one of the questions that comes to me from time to time is, how do we disrupt that pipeline? It seems like there's a direct pipeline from either certain communities or certain schools that lead them directly into gangs. What are some of the things that I want each of you to weigh in on? Some of the things that we can, if we see a young man or, whoever, looking like, boy, this youth looks like at risk or unattached or look like a prime candidate for a recruit. What are some of the things we can or should be looking for? What are the ways in which we can lend a hand to help the initiative be successful?
I'm going to use one word, and I'm going to ask Mr. Green and Mr. Minto too. But I think there's a word that is talked about all the while, but it's more just talk. Love.
Okay.
If we start loving our children, loving our boys, let them feel a sense of importance. Whilst we can identify the signs which suggest that a young man is diverting from the norm or maybe engage in gang activities, I think our children need that sense of belonging and acceptance, and the whole concept of the community raising the children. I think we need to get back to that. And I think we have been behaving as if it's their problem and it's not my problem.
Right, exactly.
And we have to be saying now that a child's problem is my problem. And I think allow the other panelists to basically speak.
Perhaps speak very generally, because the anti-gang week and focus, we really didn't brand any particular student or school, and so we selected the presentation to be done right across schools in Jamaica to ensure that we have a presence and an appreciation. People understand exactly what are some of the signs, and that's why CTAC will speak in terms of what do you look for.
Right.
The very case that the Commissioner started his introduction with, perhaps, I'm sure, maybe would have been difficult for others to see some of the traditional signs. So we want to, it's more of public education to ensure that our teachers understand what to look for, and then our students, because a boy sitting beside another one in class may see something and say, this is not normal. And so we'll be able to find, how do I speak about it? How do I channel what I'm seeing into somewhere where we can help a particular child? And so it is anticipated that we would continue this conversation way beyond even this week. And I may just add one last thing is, so we're targeting the schools, but we have actually done a message through CTAC, which is being circulated now, and it is going to be read in churches on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So we've sent it through the umbrella group of churches, an anti-gang message. So over time, it is expected that the entire population will have an appreciation of what it is, and will join the support, and not just to talk, but to help all our children. In the ministry, we say every child can learn. and every child must learn.
Yes.
And if we get to a stage where all of us ensure that our children are in school, and our minister has been talking about the K-13 strategy, keeping children, an inclusive strategy to keep them in school until they're 18. If we can ensure, Commissioner, that all children are in school and remain in school, and there are different pathways to get to the end, so they all won't go straight. There's a career advancement program and a number of other programs. Then we can be seeing a different result in the years to come.
And we are using the tagline, gang life equal no life.
All right. So, let me bring you in again, Detective Inspector Green. What do you say? What's your from where you sit? What's the reason for this continuous flow, or how can persons lend a hand to try and help you make your job easier, basically?
Well, Vaughn, these youngsters are most often attracted to these kind of groups because of the so-called, glamorous lifestyle that they see some of the other persons, are engaged in. And we say to parents, caregivers, persons who have a direct supervisory role over the younger ones, that they need to look out for some things. Things such as, and is in this age of having even the lottery scamming phenomenon, among other activities which seek to engage in profit.
Right. Get some money in their
We look out for, the youngsters having unaccounted for items, lifestyle. We also look for, gang type activities, hand signals, dressing. We talk about glamorizing some of the songs and other material that these material would have been attributed to criminal groups and so on. So parents and caregivers ought to be looking out for these, and even outside of parents and caregivers too, because they say that a community, a village raises a child. Yes, so it means therefore that once we can identify some of these and we can properly address them, no doubt we will be well on track to save some of these youngsters from going down the wrong path. And I can tell you this much, that it may seem glamorous to them initially, but with the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Act, we colloquially call the anti-gang law, that law does have teeth, and it will make those persons very uncomfortable once it is applied as how it is set out. And there are many ways for persons, there are many avenues which the law provides that gives us a greater reach, which the average law does not. Also supported by other laws too. So it means therefore, and the penalties under this act
are severe.
Quite severe.
Right.
Talking about 15, 20, 25
years.
Way up the line. So it means therefore, what I'll be asking the youngsters, do you want to be spending the rest of your life behind bars because you want to be a boss for a day? And the answer should be no.
And that is one of the things I personally have always wondered to myself. It seems to me like that's one of the occupations with the worst possible benefits you could ever take up. You know what I mean? But yet still, it still seems so attractive. To me, it just seems like if it's not one of your own cronies take you out, the police, if you get caught, you go to jail for the rest of your life. You're not going to see the road again. And all of that, and you just spend your life looking over your shoulder and all of that, and yet still it still seems appealing. I don't understand that. Maybe you can.
Without getting into detail, we did an investigation earlier on last year. 27 members of one gang organization was actually taken down, and they are still behind bars up to this very day. So when we say gang life is no life, it is temporary. The gratification is just temporary. And the question to the youth, do you want to live your life like that? Where you get up every day, you're looking over your shoulder, that sort of stuff. It doesn't pay really.
All right, so Saminto, like for you, as somebody who sees the youth and you're in the schools, you see them and you talk to them and you can get a sense of maybe what some of the pull factors are. What's your message to them having you're in a very curious position in that you're both in the schools and in the police, so you have the knowledge of what happens on both sides. So what message could you send to them?
One of the things that we're promoting, firstly, a presentation is a presentation at best, and you hope you can make an impact within a 1 hour and a 1 day. But then that same youngster or group of students will have to go back to the communities, and they will have to interface with those who we call the negative elements of society. And that is why we are promoting and pushing for a number of our uniform groups in our schools. If we can get a number of these boys and girls to join one of the cadet programs or some other program outside of the regular class, it will help with their discipline, it will help with them developing life skills and to make better choices in life. And so we are supporting a number of the uniform group. The Jamaica Combined Cadet Force, for instance, has 3,000 cadets, and we are increasing that number to 10,000 within the next 3 to 5 years. The Scouts Association that has 2,000 members, we're working with them for a massive rollout, and they're largely at the primary schools. We have very, very new now, St. John Ambulance that has been around for a number of years, but they traditionally operated outside of the school. We're running a pilot program with them to incorporate them in a number of our schools and to give them that platform. And they will teach things like first aid, CPR, other skills that they won't learn in a traditional classroom. So the idea is, how do you marry a young man with a program? And it might not be uniform group, it could be chess or something else. A mentor that will guide him or her for a couple of years, that will help to develop the sort of character that we want.
I understand that some of the initiatives will target the way gangs recruit children as young as even age 8, that kind of thing, based on what we're seeing. So do you have initiatives that will because you have to really get them while they're really young and make that lifestyle look as unappealing to them as possible. So are there any initiatives in addition to uniform groups and so on that you're targeting to cater to that younger set?
Well, let me do, and I know Commissioner is coming in. Let's stay on the uniform group. For the first time, and let's take a group like the Police Youth Club. Again, traditionally was a community group. Then 2 years ago, 2016, we opened the school doors, and we have 50 Police Youth Club in secondary schools. But 2017 was a historic year because it was the very first Police Youth Club that was launched in an early childhood institution in St. Mary. And when I spoke with CSSB, Community Safety and Security Branch, they had plans for about 3 other schools for this September school year. So we are moving the interventions much earlier. The Scouts is actually large at the primary schools. And so we're moving, our minister speaks a lot about the first 1,000 days of a child's life. And many researchers spoke about that. Hence, you can appreciate why we're moving a lot of the interventions earlier. A lot of the behavior modification program, Professor Hicklin has a program that is run under the primary school. It is hope that if you correct it from primary, when they come to the high schools, we'll have better students.
I'll give you a chance to come in.
I just want to say that through the JSF, the CSS, Community Safety and Security Branch, is engaged in a lot of initiatives to basically influence behavioral changes as well. We talk about the school resource officers. We talk about when Mr. Mintos made reference to the youth clubs within schools and engage in community to sort of divert youth from criminal activities. There are a number of initiatives. Former DCP grant started this iPod, which really to steer youth again from deviant behavior, etc. So there are a number of initiatives that are being done to influence and impact youth.
I want to touch on the topic of behavior modification and talk to me about some of the ways in which you're using the strategies you're utilizing to get some of the youth who may have already dabbled or taken a wrong turn, but you want to bring them back. Some of the behavior modification tactics that you use to get them back on the straight and narrow, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Well, first, the ministry utilizes a model which is called the school-wide positive behavior and intervention support. And that is a data-driven model which encompasses a whole school approach. So when the intervention is done, we first of all train all the persons within a particular school, administrators principals, teachers, and even the ancillary staff. So it's a whole school approach. And part of that strategy is to ensure that all the persons within a particular space understands how to use positive approaches to treat with persons with behavioral challenges. Under the SWPBIS model, there are 3 tiers. And the first tier, which is actually suggesting that 80% of our students are well-behaved and are normal students with perhaps very little behavioral challenges. So the second tier speaks to about 15% that will display some behavioral issues. And then at the top tier really says that there are only 5% of our students that has chronic behavioral issues. And some of those interventions will lead to them coming before the police or the justice system or CPFSA. So within that model now, we have different intervention at each tier. So you have the guidance and counsel, we have uniform group and the different things, and the different behavior modification program. I mentioned Professor Hicklin out of UWI Carmenza, who manages the Dreamer World program, and that's at the primary school. There's a PBIS program, which is done through the Jamaica Theological Seminary, and we have that in perhaps about 80 of our secondary schools. And we do have a number of, the CSSB also has a mentorship program that was launched in 40 of our schools. So there are a number of programs, and I can mention other groups that work with us, like the Dispute Resolution Foundation that has this in-school, not in school, but a suspension program that when students are misbehaving, we send them to this. And you perhaps would have heard that the ministry is launching for September 2 timeout facilities, and 11 will come on stream in January.
We're talking with representatives of both the Jamaica Constabulary Force and Ministry of Education about Anti-Gang Week activities. We're thanking everybody who's checking in. Just to big up Nadine Powell, thanks for your comment. Leota McDonald, thank you very much for your comment. Appreciate that. Neville Harriet, Rosemary Dixon, appreciate you for joining in. We really do appreciate it.
A suspension program.
I want to go back to Detective Inspector Green and talk to me about what you have seen with the intervention of these various programs to modify behavior and so on. What have you seen? How are they benefiting you or making your job a little bit easier? The impact of these uniform groups or these different initiatives that try and rehabilitate some of our youngsters and so on.
Well, even though at this point in time, the benefits, they're incremental as we're seeing them, but the hope is that having this thrust going forward, in getting to the youngsters, we hope to see in short order real tangible results from our efforts. We're actually seeing some indications of that already, but it is clear from where we sit that if we do not treat with the problem from its root source, then we will have years to come, 3, 4, 5 years to come. We'll be having, with the advent of, with the technological advances that have been made, information to younger persons now, just at their fingertips. So it means, therefore, they are open to all different kinds of influences. So it means, therefore, our efforts have to be redoubled significantly for us as law enforcement officers, to see, the changes that we so desire, because the younger ones, they do not necessarily understand fully what it means to be in a criminal gang. So as they are being made aware, it means that the anticipation, the hope from us is that they will understand, being supported by the adults, of course, the parents and so on, that, over time we'll be seeing some real tangible results.
All right, so I'm going to bring things back again to you, ACP. I want you just once again let people know what are some of the activities that are planned for next week and what people can look forward to for the activities.
As I indicated before, there are a number of activities. We start with our church service on Sunday, and then we have a media day. Monday, we have the in-school activity where 150 persons will be targeted, 150 schools rather will be targeted. We have a day when we'll be looking at persons who are in state care We'll be meeting at the Caymanas Golf Club, and a number of interventions will be taking place there. We have a town hall meeting at Mandela's Park, and then we have the final activity on Friday. And I want to say that what we are trying to achieve is to utilize a comprehensive approach that involves multiple sectors and discipline working together. So we want to enlist maybe justice of the peace, social service, health, businesses, faith-based organization. So we want the message to be, to spread right across, far and wide, and arise the consciousness of people to say that I must get involved if we are going to save Jamaica.
All right. And Saminto, a last word, this goes to you. Make an appeal to, looking at camera, make an appeal to members of the public to come out and lend their support to all activities that we have planned next week.
This activity is geared towards saving Jamaica. As the theme suggests, a gang life equals no life. And as Commissioner Bailey pointed out earlier, if we do not disrupt and interrupt the flow of gangs and the proliferation of gangs, then it also has some economic implications. And so we are appealing to all Jamaica to support the week of activities. There are a number of activities planned right across Jamaica. We do have a message which is going out through the umbrella group of churches that will be read in churches on the weekend. And there are a number of other events being planned outside of the week in the various police divisions. Following the week of activities, there are a number of other events that are being planned. All the correctional facilities, juvenile correctional facilities, will benefit from a similar intervention over the next couple of weeks. And we continue to work with CTOC as we roll out the different programs with now the National Parenting Support Commission, the National PTA, and other community groups.
Wonderful. All right, now it's time for us to wrap. Thanks to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. We really do appreciate it. And if you have a question that you'd like to ask, don't hesitate. Send it in all the same. We'll be going through afterwards, and we can perhaps send them on to our guests. Maybe they can provide you answers that you need. You can always check us back or send us directly, and we can link with them and make sure that you get answers about the activities and so on that are planned for next week. Remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone in particular you'd like us to have in studio, just let us know, and we'll try our best to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a good day.